thought they had a great point at Stamford Bridge until the PGMOL discovered that not only William Saliba, but all 11 Arsenal players on the pitch had arms. This is the Arsenal Vision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Ant Gunner. That's right. Now that they've discovered that all of the players had arms, we have had a points deduction. Now, they've taken away the point we got at Stamford Bridge. They're considering a further points deduction. I mean, it is outrageous. The game is football. You don't need arms. If you had real commitment, and this goes for Saliba and for all players, you'd get rid of the arms. And, I think also that would reflect a respect for the PGMOL and its referees who clearly struggle to enforce the laws of the game, and in particular the handball law. And that's a tough one to interpret. And if the players were kind enough not to have arms, then there would be no need for this kind of debate and distraction. And so we'll see what happens with that. I want to say just a very quick thank you to the Minnesota Gooners who hosted myself and Paul this weekend, along with hundreds of other Gooners from across the Midwest. And Arsenal America, thank you as well. Lori Laker, obviously an important organizer. Ethan as well. Just a great group of people. And, I cannot wait to see Clive and Tim over in London in just a few short days' time. But to be able to see so many people like here in my own hometown, really special. Just really incredible the way there are so many Arsenal supporters all over the world. We are gargantuan, as they say. We are legion. And, it was fun to get together. The downside of that, I have to say, is I did go to Chicago for an event, watched a game in Chicago. I did go to New York for an event and watched a game in New York. And I did go to this event. And in all cases, we drew the West Ham draw last season, the Southampton draw last season, and the Chelsea draw this season. So future U.S.-based meetups may have to be canceled. But my record is unblemished at the Emirates. So, there's still reason for me to head over there and to look forward to the Sheffield United game. Sevilla tomorrow. So it's going to be an interesting week of podcasting. I think what we'll do, we'll obviously have an instant reaction as always over on the Patreon side right at full time of the Sevilla game. We'll probably just do the main pod on Thursday. And that gives us Wednesday to do something like a Chelsea rewatch or Sevilla rewatch. We'll do 3 big questions later this week over on Patreon, but we'll have our regular pods here as always. Okay, that should just about cover all the admin. I don't think there's anything else to relay to you at this time. Stand by, though, for obviously some amazing brands that you're not going to want to miss out on, unless you're a patron, in which case you get the ad-free episode and you miss out entirely. So here with me now to discuss Arsenal and Chelsea battling their way, slogging their way to a draw through a very wet and cold and gray and gross pitch at Stamford Bridge on Saturday is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Stillman. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
And Clive. You can find him on Twitter, Clive PFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
It's interesting because our usual recording environment wasn't working today, so we're in a different one. And it's like playing away. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm on a different pitch. The buttons aren't where they're supposed to be. The video isn't where it's supposed to be on my screen. So it's a little disorienting. Tim, can I just ask you super quick before we get into the analysis? Like, you were there, I presume, right?
Mm-hmm. I was.
Yep. As wet and windy and heavy and gross as it appeared on TV. Like, there's been a lot of discussion about the way the elements impacted the game, but just quickly, as our meteorologist, how bad was it in person?
Yeah, it was. I mean, fortunately, I was in the upper tier and kind of insulated from it. But in the pub beforehand, we were kind of chatting away, and all of a sudden there was a big influx of people into said pub, and we wondered what it was, and we turned round to see a biblical rainstorm, and basically lots of people had kind of come into Wetherspoons to shelter, as foretold in the Bible, I believe. I believe Wetherspoons features a lot in the Bible. So yeah, it was pretty, like, even the pictures I took had a real Blade Runner quality to them, put it that way.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't think it's overstating it to say that the elements impacted the game. You could see it the way the ball was rolling on the pitch. But let's get right into it, Clive. We got to pick that first choice front three that was going to solve all our attacking problems, and boy did it ever with the 5 goals we scored in the first half. Oh, no, wait. It didn't solve everything, unfortunately. We also picked the same midfield from the City game. Thomas Partey, I guess now, with the benefit of hindsight, probably just not fit enough to play, or they didn't feel that they wanted him running around on that pitch, having just come back from the U.S. Obviously, there were some players just back from all over the world. Chelsea picked a midfield that when we were talking about it at the pub with everybody before the game, a lot of athleticism in there, a lot of legs. Caicedo, Enzo, Gallagher, a lot of pitch coverage there. And obviously Jorginho in particular looked like one that might be targeted, although I think overall an important contributor. We can come on to that. But just let's get right into it. A really tough start to the game. our tactics. We set out to play like it was the City game. It wasn't the City game, and it really didn't work. What did you see from the start of the game that they exploited or that we were unable to accomplish?
Yeah, so I think it was not the City game, because the City game was a shorts and T-shirt day, and a couple of weeks later, we had this event. And I do think sometimes when you plan for a game versus when you turn up for a game, your mindset needs to change. And Chelsea have picked an off-the-ball team, with a team to basically rat and chase, similar to what Crystal Palace did a couple of years ago to us, with Gallagher playing as a pressing 10. To rat and chase, play nice and narrow, send us outside. So when they send us outside, normally at the Emirates, the ball flows across the grass, and they've got to get out there. When they get out there, they get out there late. We can get them off balance. We can come inside, and it's all over. When you're playing this game and you're playing to the outside, and the ball takes 3 weeks to get there, you can literally read the advertising on the ball. It's spinning so slowly across the grass, and straight away you think to yourself, "Hold on a minute, something's not quite right here." So I immediately tweeted out saying, this is not a 45 pass Raya back to Raya game. This is about playing in the opposition's half. Send that out within 5 minutes of the game starting. There are some games which are football games which you'll recognise, and there are some games which are territory games. And funny enough, Saturday was a big rugby day in the World Cup semi-final. Very similar weather, wet weather game. And it's all about territory. And I'm afraid this game was all about territory, where you played. And it just took Arsenal, for me, too long to recognise where the game needed to be played. And as soon as we did, the gap in quality was significant. So significant, I'm sure when teams walked out of that ground, he's thinking, mate, we could have won that if we'd have switched on sooner. If we'd have switched on sooner to the problem that was in front of us, we'd have won that game, because they're not as good as us. They have not got a sustainable way of scoring goals. Think about the goals they've scored. They had a sustainable way of forcing mistakes, which is a typical Pochettino, off the ball, away from your goal type system. And we fell into it for far too long. You know what, Tim, Elliot, I was thinking during the start of this game, 15 minutes in, keeper, can you sit down? Just sit down so we could have a bit of a tactical timeout. But I think it took till half-time for us to realise we had to be more aggressive, play in better areas, and then the game, although they got the second goal, they were fortunate to get that, but the game did sort of improve as the game went on, as we worked out the problem that was in front of us.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of factors that contributed to us not being able to play our football. I think the elements were part of it. I think the refereeing was part of it. I also think Chelsea, that team, has a lot of running power in it. And, if you think about Pochettino's time at Spurs, whether you want to think about it or not, remember what his football was. It was not pretty football. It was ugly. It was physical. Contest the midfield, harry, and then go long, right, to Kane to knock it down to Son and exploit those quick transitions. But he made this a physical game. And, Tim, we made a lot of mistakes early on. And I think sometimes a game can get under your skin quickly. You know what I mean? Is like it just gets off to the wrong start, and you struggle to get control of your emotions, to get control of your technique. Obviously, the pitch was wet, but I think it was the 8th minute. Cole Palmer goes in with that challenge on Jesus from behind on the ankle. It's really, really bad challenge, and he gets a yellow for it. I think maybe earlier than that, Cucurella takes out Saka. Now, I think it was after a whistle or something, but he took him out. Aggressively kicked right through the back of his calf. Maybe it wasn't after a whistle. I could be wrong about that. He goes down. But he kicked him twice early in the start of that game. There was a lot of physicality. They set out to let us know we weren't just going to play, the ticky-tack of football and pass it around all nice and clean. And the pitch was contributing that, and they were chasing. And just the volume of errors then that we made. There was a really bad Jorginho pass early. Zinchenko had the one where we recover the ball in our own penalty box, and he tries to kind of carry it out and pass it forward and gives it away. Obviously, David Raya had a bad giveaway. Declan Rice, uncharacteristically, had one right around the center circle where he gets the ball, turns around, and gives it straight to Cole Palmer. So what do you think of that initial period, the combination of them sort of really showcasing that they were going to have a go at us physically and with their energy, and our unforced errors kind of combining to just throw us off our game in general?
Yeah, I'm really glad I've had some time to collect my thoughts about this, because I really struggled with it on Saturday. To Clive's point about how I felt when I left the ground, I still felt frustrated because I felt like we should have won, but not because of the way the game turned out, but the way I think the game should have been. So, yeah, there's definitely all of that. I was just listening to a podcast this morning on, I believe they're also on Blue Wire, on a guy from the Chelsea is Blue pod, on Tifo, and he was talking about like the stuff that Pochettino's been doing, and he talked about how when Pochettino took over Spurs, they were second last in distance run in the Premier League, and Southampton, who Pochettino managed, was second. 2 seasons later, Spurs were first, 3 seasons in a row for distance run. So to your point, Elliot, that is what Pochettino teams do, and sometimes there's something about the time that you play teams. We played Man City at a good time because they'd lost some good players. I felt like this wasn't a good time to play Chelsea. I know they've beaten Fulham and Burnley, who are both a bit rubbish. Mind you, we didn't beat Fulham. But they've settled on some stuff, and that midfield of Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, Conor Gallagher, and they do this thing where they send Conor Gallagher over to the right, which is obviously where Zinchenko is, but they do that anyway so Cole Palmer can come in and come into those number 10 areas, and yeah, very, very like transition-y, off the ball. It almost reminded me in a weird way about how some of those games against Ferguson's United went a couple of times. Just when United accepted that they were the underdog. Chelsea played underdog football, and to Clive's point, we allowed them to play underdog football. And I listened to like the Totally Football show this morning, and they're all like, Chelsea were wonderful, they were brilliant, they were amazing, Arsenal were rubbish. And I get that, because it's about where the expectations are for both teams. And they had Matt Davis-Adams on, who's the in-house commentator for Chelsea TV. He's not a Chelsea fan, but he does their in-house commentary, so he's at all their home games, and he said that was the best Chelsea home game of the Todd Boehly era, which tells you something about how bad they've been for the last season and a half. But I think they did kind of target this game a little bit. They'd been allowed to build a little bit of momentum, and another podcast I listened to this morning was Wrighty's House with Clive on, and just a couple of things that really helped me clear my thinking about this game. One was something that Ian said, where he said Chelsea couldn't lose, and I think that was really important, both for the way the game turned out, but also the post hoc analysis of it, where it's like Chelsea are wonderful, amazing, brilliant stuff, and they were good, they were effective, but they like, again, to your point, Elliot, we turned it on for 5 minutes and we scored twice. And that's why I felt so frustrated afterwards, because I felt the waiting, certainly, not recognising what type of game it was. I said, City, that's a Jorginho game. I wanted him to start regardless of who was fit. Didn't really want him to start this game. I felt this was much more either Partey or Havertz kind of game, and it did take us too long, and we can talk about the subs because I thought those were revealing, not just Havertz, but I just felt like we played for 10 minutes in this game and we scored twice, and that's what frustrated me, because I felt, even though this is Chelsea, they're beginning to put it together a bit, I still felt that they were like, they're miles off our level at the moment. I do think they might be coming, but they're miles off our level at the moment, and we allowed it to be an underdog game, and obviously going 1-0 down plays into that as well, but we were too pliant. We should have done what we did there last season and get on top of them straight away and just don't let them have a sniff, and we let them have one too many sniffs.
Their tactic was nullification. It was to destroy something beautiful, right? Destroy our beautiful football, and they did it really well. They deserve credit for that. Where you have to be realistic about their performances, they didn't actually create. They destroyed. And what I mean is, they get a goal from a penalty that shouldn't be a penalty. We'll come on to it in a bit. Of the XG they created, that's almost all of it. They also get a goal from a cross that flies in. It's a fluke. In the entire game, they create almost nothing else. Certainly no clear chances in the whole game. And by the way, they got those goals. You don't get to just yada yada the fact that they got 2 goals, but their approach was not designed to create opportunity for them. It was designed to destroy our flow, right? Our flow-based football that Clive talks about a lot. And I think the question is, were we too stubborn, Clive, in trying to continue to do what we do well on a day when the combination of, to their credit, the running power they had, the physical traits of the team they picked, and to their fortune, the elements were against our flow-based football? Were we sort of stubbornly trying to stick to a plan that simply wasn't going to work for the game that we had in front of us?
Yeah, I think Tim still spoke well about Chelsea there, and I'm not having them at all, basically. This is the best they can do at the moment till they get proper forward in place and maybe a creative number 10 rather than a pressing 10. But this is where they are, and they'll be fine. They've spent enough money. They've got a team at a good age, and they're just waiting for talents to come through. Another thing they said in that podcast, Tim, was about buying talents before they explode. And they've got a number of talents that look great on FIFA that could really explode. So they're going to get here at some point, right? So let's ignore them. But this is an Arsenal podcast, and what is the lessons that Arsenal have got to learn? There's a couple of lessons for me. And game recognition is definitely number one. Recognising the game that's on offer and what we've got to do to overcome it. I don't like using this phrase because it sounds a bit Tim Sherwood, but was there enough leaders on the pitch to recognise the game that was required, to when to change, right? So, and who provides that leadership? Did it come from the sideline? Did it come from the pitch? It was obvious it was a roll up your sleeves Declan Rice game rather than a Jorginho five-a-side game. Make that change at halftime. Just do it. Because our game was, as soon as Rice was in the middle, our game was defined by him. Right? It was his day. Not every day is going to be his day, but it's his day. Jorginho was fine in a compressed space on the Emirates on a sunny, nice pitch when everything is all about recycling. Absolutely fine. Not a problem with him. It was the wrong day for him. It was the wrong day for Martin Odegaard. Recognise it, change it. Do what Rassi did for South Africa. Make the changes. Just make the change. It's not a problem. We have this squad to create options so we are not petrified when one of our first 11 has a bad day. We just make the changes and adapt to the game that's on offer. And this is the key thing for me. Game recognition, changing quickly enough. And also, I will say, maybe the way we started the game, I felt we set the wrong tone. We weren't competitive enough. Arteta used a great phrase. We played without purpose. And Elliot, we have this debate without actually having it about attack, clicking, etc. But I know where you are with it. I know how you look at football. We're not having a debate, but I'm having it with you on my own. Right? I'm arguing with you in my head. But really, I would like to see more attacking purpose, and by that, I want to see us playing forward a little bit more when the opportunity is there. Sometimes when their defender Levi Colwell steps on the ball, Gusto kicks the ball out a couple of times. That's telling me where we should be playing. We should be playing in our penalty box. We should be playing in their penalty box. And I don't care what your patterns of play are. I don't care what you've worked on all week. You have to look for the dopes. And the dopes were in their back four. And we had to put them under pressure. We had to get them on cards. We had to pressurise them. And what we did, we played in areas where they can come up behind us and smash us and say, sorry, ref, and jog off. That's not what we've got to be doing. We got to be receiving the ball on the front foot, running into them. So when they foul, they get cards and they can't get near us and we can take them out. It's a very simple. We picked the wrong team for the day, which is fine. But just recognise it, change it, and then go and deal with them. And I have a similar frustration to the Spurs 2-2. But the difference with the Spurs 2-2 is I felt we literally ran out of players that day and we were unfortunate with injury, etc. On this one, I felt we were more in control of the outcome if we'd have reacted sooner. So I have a frustration there while recognising sometimes you need to go through this experience to put it in the well, say next time we have this scenario, what do we do? Do you see what I mean? It's a unique scenario, whether the way they were playing. What do we do? What is our game plan? What is our game plan for this scenario? Maybe we need to go through it to learn it, and I hope we have learned something.
Can I just jump in there and just say as well, we talked about the Man City home game as well last season, didn't we? Like, what did Man City do? They were not embarrassed about smashing the ball long over the top of us, which in a way was a compliment to us, but we'll take our compliment, they'll take their 3-1 win. Like, they weren't like, even Pep Guardiola, the great Pep Guardiola, was not embarrassed to smash it against us because he felt that was the best way to win. And I think Clive's nailed it there. We're playing too much at the moment in areas that are incidental, and when Man City strangle you with possession, it's De Bruyne that's on the ball, it's Grealish that's on the ball, it's Foden on the ball. It's not Diaz, it's not Ake. They're not playing with their food in front of their 18-yard box. They're playing with it in front of yours, and that's where we've got to turn the dial, I think.
Yeah, and I think what happens to teams, there's a period of a game where a really good team comes to your place, and you think you might be good, you're not sure how good you are, you haven't figured it out yet. And that first 15 minutes can be really important, right? That chance to be like, we can play with these guys. We're good. We can match them. Versus, oh shit, they have our number. We're in deep shit here. And I just think the combination of really silly giveaways that emboldened Chelsea, right? A couple of kicks that they were able to get away with. The Cole Palmer when he got a yellow, but I mean, it's an orange, right? The kicks on Saka. And then, the penalty ultimately, giving them a first goal, I think allowed Chelsea to really set up to be the driving force in this game in the first half. And by the way, guys, like, I think Pochettino recognized something. A lot of people are saying we're the best out-of-possession team on the planet right now. We might be. So you know what Chelsea said? Fine, have the ball in your defensive third, try to play around our running power in midfield and on this sopping wet pitch, because we're not going to play into your hands, Tim. We're not going to play the out-of-possession game where we try to out-technique you because the way you cover the pitch and the way you position yourself out of possession is exceptional, so we're not going to play that game. And we did sort of play into their hands, as Clive has really, I think, expertly identified. So I want to just ask you about some of the kind of uncharacteristically lacking composure performances. I think Zinchenko, in particular, just was a problem in this game. And I think the thing that really frustrated me was the yellow card he picked up on Mudryk. And I think Mudryk baits him into it a little bit. I'm not sure there's much contact there, frankly. But I just hate that he does it. He's come all the way across to go get him. It felt a little bit like, because did you see the comments of the week? He's like, if you score against us, I'm going to rip your balls off. Ha, ha, ha. Like, it almost felt like I'm going to go have a kick on this guy, and let him know, hey, I'm here, Mikhailo. Like, there was something about it, and it frustrated me because that yellow card is the reason he doesn't stay on. He almost gets rinsed by Sterling near the end of the first half because he's on a yellow. Sterling drops the shoulder. He's not able to run with him. Zinchenko's one that comes to mind for me. You could talk Raya. You could talk about a few Jorginho sloppy giveaways, although he also was really the only progressive force we had in the first half. What do you think about some individual performances that kind of helped Chelsea play the way that they wanted to play that first half?
Yeah, I mean, we had Zinchenko, Jorginho, Ødegaard. None of them played well, and it was probably because the mix was wrong. It was probably one too many kind of controlling players, and to Clive's point there, like Zinchenko did get hooked at half-time, and that was the right decision because this was a Tomiyasu game. And in hindsight, I'm not going to pretend personally that I was shouting from the start, but that's how it turned out, and it reminded me a little bit in that scenario. Like, Zinchenko nearly always plays when he's fit, and I think that's right. But then you look back, almost exactly a year ago, we played Liverpool, and it was Tomiyasu at left back because it was like, these guys have got running power. It's Liverpool, it's Salah, it's those guys like running at you. And look, Chelsea don't have that much quality, but it's Sterling, it's Gallagher, it's Cole Palmer, it's Mudryk. Like, that's a lot of running power, and that's a position or an area at least where Arsenal have shown vulnerability, particularly last season in that kind of left half space, because Zinchenko's not really a defender. He's not a terrible defender, but he's definitely not a good or great defender. Like, he's not a natural, and the yellow card makes the decision. But like, once Tomiyasu comes on, like, what on earth do Chelsea get down that side? Nothing. I barely even remember the ball being there. Like he locked it down, and that's the thing. Like I wrote in the week about like looking at the squad as a bit of a toolbox, you know, and this was just, you know, like different tools for different jobs, and this time like you needed the sledgehammer, right, instead of like the plane or something, and that's what it is. And the next game might not be like that. The next game, I don't know enough about Sevilla, but that might be Zinchenko heaven. I don't know. But this was Tomiyasu games, transitional, balls moving around a lot. You know, they're looking for the ball to break and go into areas, and he's just an absolutely world-class one-on-one defender. Like, just absolutely top class in those situations. And so this was his game. And it was probably, like I said earlier, at least one of Havertz or Partey, and probably Havertz to give us the option to go over the top of that press. But yeah, definitely. And you know, that Zinchenko giveaway on the edge of the area early on, that kind of sets a tone. And it just, particularly because of the conditions, it just wasn't a day for that. Like, you know, I'm sure we'll have the goalkeeper discussion, and I know people are getting very fidgety about it. But, you know, guys like Zinchenko and Jorginho, they don't usually do this, right? They're usually ultra secure technically. And actually, the reason Tomiyasu doesn't start ahead of Zinchenko is because you do lose a bit of technical control, because Zinchenko is top drawer at that, but that wasn't the game that it was. And so, like, some of that I can appreciate came out in the wash, like the Tomiyasu for Zinchenko thing. Yeah, I can appreciate that's probably a hindsight thing, but yeah, the Jorginho one, you know, and maybe have a look at the weather forecast before the game, like, and I'm not talking about, like, I don't mean that in terms of like Jorginho doesn't like the rain. It's much more about the conditions and what that means for the ball and the speed that the ball moves and everything else. Like, it's not really a game for a metronome, and I don't think, with the conditions allied with the way Chelsea were playing, it just wasn't really a day for our technicians. And that's not how our goals came about either. Our goals came about because one of our midfielders had enough and smashed it into the back of the net from 40 yards, and the other one came because we put a cross in and we tested them. So that's the kind of game it was.
Yeah, and I mean, we won this game because of the strength and depth of our squad, which is not a thing that could have happened in seasons past. We won this game because of Declan Rice, who, again, I think you see why we mustered all of our resources to go get him, by the way, because we've played Tottenham, we've played United, we've played City, and we've played Chelsea. You know how many minutes Thomas Partey has played in those 4 games? 15. Thomas Partey has played 15 minutes. No matter how good he is, you cannot achieve the things we want to achieve when one of your most important players in the middle of the pitch plays 15 minutes of your 4 big games to start the season. Declan Rice played all of them except the second half against Spurs, which we would have won. So, like, I just think, it is the case that we would have loved to have had Thomas Partey out there for some of this game. I think, you know, it was a game more for him than Jorginho, most likely. But that lack of availability is something that we don't have to worry about as much anymore, because we did go out and get Declan Rice. And on a day when Odegaard doesn't have it, who's the person who can play on the sopping wet pitch and the bad elements when the game is about physicality, not technique, and say, you know what? I can do it this way too. And Declan Rice can do it that way too. And thank God he could. We got to touch on the decisions, but before we do that, because I know there are some people that want to hear about the referee debate, but I think a more interesting conversation to put ahead of that is just the goalkeeper thing. I really do believe that football is a combination of strengths, but also of moments of weakness. Like, what am I trying to say? Let me rephrase this. You can have 89 good minutes, but if in 1 minute you make the error that costs your team the game, that's not, obviously that's not acceptable. And I think we sometimes are guilty of leaning too much into analyzing the really good things a player does for the majority of the game and underweighting the critical error. And in certain positions, obviously, that critical error is more important than everything else you do. And, we brought up Onana at United before, and I'm not saying that's where Raya is right now, but if Raya wants to hold on to this job, he is going to have to cut out the errors, because they also just unsettle your back line. They unsettle the defense. They embolden the attack. I mean, obviously Chelsea give up a goal through a goalkeeper error as well. So neither keeper had a great day. But Clive, I'm curious where you are with Raya, because this is consecutive big games we played now in which he was a bit rattled and he made some mistakes that could have cost us the game. And I think it's a debate I'm sure Mikel certainly doesn't want to have to be having. I'm not sure he even considers it a debate, but where are you with Raya and another game that is, far from a comfortable performance?
Yeah, I've been quite consistent. I don't think the gap is big. And for me, we have a lot more discussions around substitutions this season. And the reason why, because the manager has brought players into our squad. This allows us to have this debate about starting 11, the substitutions, and have we recognised the game? Because have we got the tools on the bench for a different game, which we have. Now we can debate what time they enter the pitch. And that's a good debate, rather than the ones we were having last year. We were thinking we don't want any of the first 12 to not be there, right? So the manager has got us to this place where we can have this next discussion about goalkeepers. So my personal opinion is goalkeeping. I didn't think Ramsdale done a lot wrong. I could absolutely see the comfort levels around distribution and just ball playing of Raya. I have got a concern, which I have voiced previously, about the emphasis in the areas by which we play. I think sometimes we're playing too close to our goal for too long, because he's quite an attractive player to go back to, because he's a fantastic distributor. So sometimes, rather than think forward, you're thinking, you know what, we can go back because we're going to be all right. Tactically against City, I got it. Get yourself in shape before you attack, because they will kill you if you're not in shape. Right? So I can get it, I can explain it. But for me, if you go back to pure performance, we're not goalkeeping experts, but maybe we're looking at this slightly wrong. So there's a couple of aspects with Raya that I'm not sure. I think mentally, he's showing a little bit of weakness. But again, some of the games he's playing now are the biggest games of his career. He's never been in this spotlight before. Right? So why wouldn't he show a little bit of mental weakness? I never worry too much about the fans' feeling. I look for relationships with the back four. Ramsdale had a fantastic relationship with his back four. I'm looking for little breaks there. When that ball lobbed him, the players turned away from him and they looked a little bit disappointed about that goal. I'm not saying disappointed in him. I thought they were disappointed in that goal. If the back four start to look at you and think, we're not sure about you, you have a problem. Right? You do. I think there are other aspects of the game. Talking goal, I was talking to a goalkeeping coach friend of mine, Mark, today, a pre-pod, to sort of get my head on about goalkeeping. And he says, distribution is quite similar. But one thing that we're maybe missing is I don't think Ray is very good at one-on-ones. And this, to me, is something that we do give up one-on-ones, and Ramsdale is far superior in one-on-ones. Ray is better at crosses, but he gambles for crosses, and we saw what could happen if that goes wrong, although I don't think that's his fault at all. And distribution-wise, I think Ray is a touch ahead. But I'm not sure the gap is big enough for some of the stresses that we're having around the club at the moment. So my view on this, Elliot, is very, very simple. Arteta introduced this goalkeeper into our club, and I'm absolutely behind it 100%. I was calling it like Tomiyasu syndrome. Tomiyasu's a really good player. He could play left back or right back for his team, or centre back. If our left back is kicking it into the crowd, I expect him to play Tomiyasu. When Tomiyasu kicked it against City last season, made a couple of errors, he didn't play the next game. I just want him to, if you are going to treat these players like outfield players, then treat them like outfield players. If you have a couple of dodgy games, I expect them to be changed. Simple as that. Because that's what we'd expect. So I'm looking for truth here. If you're being true to your word, the word that you explained about how you're looking at goalkeepers, having no number ones and same for every other position, if you're being truthful to your word, I'm thinking in the next couple of games, I think Aaron Ramsdale deserves a shot. That's all I would say on it. Just like any other position. When Eddie tired last season, he had to come out, and we found a solution in Trossard. If Gabriel Jesus, he ended the game really tired, back from the US for playing 90 minutes against Uruguay, etc., he tired towards the end of the game. If he tires again in Sevilla tomorrow night, we might have to think about something else. This is what we want it to be. We want it to be this way. If you're trying to raise standards, if people drop off in form, it's okay, because we have the players to come in. don't say we're trying to build a squad, trying to raise standards, and then when a player drops just a touch below, don't do anything about it and put someone to the side. So I'm watching the next couple of weeks now. If Raya does a fantastic game in Sevilla, I'm not sure he's going to play or not. I'm not sure if Ramsdale's going to travel or not due to the fact he had his first child. Very, very exciting time for him. If Raya plays well in Seville, then we've got another discussion. But if he has an average game, maybe Sheffield United at the weekend, we make a change. And we need to be okay about that. No dramas. It's football, it's form, it's what happens in a 55-game season. You built the squad to allow you to do this, so do it.
Yeah.
When it's required.
Yeah, well, we've used the squad really effectively all season. Then the question now becomes, will we use it where the goalkeeper's concerned? I want to talk about not just the decision, the penalty decision, but two decisions that were made in this game, or one that was made, one that wasn't made, because they're important. I don't want to overdo it because talking about refereeing just isn't that interesting, apart from saying not good enough, but we need to talk about it because it was a critical turning point in the game. Before we wrap this up today, I do want to try to answer the question of whether our glass is half empty or half full, because I do see a lot of concern, a lot of worry. I myself at full time, for a point at Stamford Bridge that we rescued from 2-0 down, felt disappointed, felt a little dispirited, and I can't put my finger on why. We've beaten Manchester City this season. We haven't lost a game yet. We're right there at the top of the table. Is our glass half empty or half full? I think there's some people that feel amazing about where we are this season, and then there are concerns. Certainly we could say that front three that was going to sort of solve everything in attack, that hasn't happened yet. Maybe this wasn't a day for it, so we'll come on to that. So we'll handle all of that in a moment, and I really want to get to that. Obviously, though, we are getting into fall and winter, and you may be inclined to think about warmth and think about keeping yourself warm through the winter. There are clothes for that. You do not have to use body hair for that. You can, obviously, you can. And to all the hirsute gentlemen listening, or ladies, you can, but I would recommend you don't. And so, obviously, we want to tell you about the phenomenal products from Manscaped. Manscaped has a number of new tools that you may not be familiar with. So, obviously, about the purpose-built grooming tool for your privates, the Lawnmower 4.0. We've talked about it a lot. But, I have been using the face trimming products. So they have the Handyman and the Beard Hedger. Let me tell you about the Handyman. The Handyman is a really compact, waterproof, battery-powered electric shaver. And obviously I'm going to London this week, and to be able to just drop that in the bag, bring it with me, not have to worry about razor blades and shaving cream and all that. And if I want to get a shave on the flight, so I can get going right when I land in London. Last season I hit the ground, hopped on a train with Tim, took some Jaeger, and went to Leicester, right? If you need to be well shaved for that. You don't want people to look at you as you're doing Jaeger bombs on a train at 8 a.m. and say, oh my, he has 5 o'clock shadow. That is not appropriate for this situation. So, the Handyman can help with that. Then you got the Beard Hedger, 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard. And those tools are so great, whether it's for eyebrows or beard trimming. The Beard Hedger is a high-tech piece of art and travel size package. Everything that Manscaped makes is easy to bring with you. Long battery lives. You're going to love it. Of course, you can get the Lawnmower 4.0. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use code ArsenalVision for a look as sweet as candy. Get yourself the Handyman from Manscaped. I think that's their Halloween-inspired copy there. Now, of all the products and services that we recommend, this is the one that I get the most questions about our promo code, people just wanting our promo code for it, and that is NordVPN. This is the one that just comes through every time I use it. I will be using it this week when I travel to London and I want to watch some of the Premier League games that are not, for some reason, available to watch literally in England when they're happening in England. So I have to VPN back to the US. Okay, that's the thing. I use NordVPN. It's an app. You click it, it turns on, whether it's on your computer, on your phone, on your tablet, makes no difference. You're in the US, you want to stream Match of the Day in the UK, you can VPN over there and get to the BBC site and watch it. Vice versa, you can do all of that. It does give you safe browsing. Obviously, you don't want to be tracked. You don't want to be studied. You don't want to be under the microscope for your browsing habits because, again, we don't kink shame here. And whatever it is you're looking at, enjoying, consuming, that is your business and nobody else's. They have threat protection, so they'll stop stuff getting on your computer before it gets there. NordVPN team did a national privacy test, which could be an interesting thing for you to look at if you want to look at that. But basically, they did a national privacy test and came up with some results showing why you really need a VPN. Let me give you the tools to get this phenomenal product. You can grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision to get a plan. Plus, this is cool. Ready for this? 4 additional months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So go to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan and 4 additional months for free, completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That should just about do it. Clive, is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Not it. Okay. All right, Tim, let's... how bad was the refereeing this time? We need a sponsor for this section. What's a bad decision? I took Malort shots. So we can have how bad a decision was it? Brought to you by Malort. If you're not familiar with that liquor, then you are living a better life than I am. Tim, it's weird, right? I was in the pub, so I got to hear all the disparate opinions. My opinion of the handball was it will be given because that's how these things are given now, but that is a nonsense. So that's sort of my take. The people that played the game seem the most outraged by it. That's how you jump. That's where your arms go when you jump. And the other thing, apparently there's something in the rules that suggests that it being on target would be a factor in the decision. We have VAR. There's a clear angle that it is going well wide. I'll just say this, Tim, as my final point on this. I want refereeing decisions, more than anything, to feel equitable. That the outcome feels equitable. So if I'm racing in on goal and you hack me down and I get a penalty, that feels equitable. If it's a really tight 0-0 type game, no one's created anything, the ball comes into the box, there's a handball where he can do nothing about it and it's flashing wide, and you turn that into an 80% chance at a goal, that doesn't feel equitable to me. And I just feel the law was applied the way I expected it to be, but not the way it should be.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. I think basically it is a penalty, but it kind of shouldn't be. But I can't necessarily get upset at the ref because that just is a penalty. And the thing is as well, handball has always been a bit vibey. It's always been a bit vibey. But obviously VAR doesn't it doesn't sit with vibey rules. It's a little bit like offside, and don't get me wrong, a lot of people think this is good and it's definitely consistent. But VAR, for example, has turned offside into if you haven't clipped your toenails this week, you might be offside type thing. Whereas the spirit of the law and the application, but handball, that's one that I think PGMOL, I think understandably are struggling with, because there's another part of me that's just like, his hand's out, it hits his hand in the penalty area, can't really complain. I agree with you. I don't think there's an awful lot you can do, and you've got it's impossible to jump with like your hands behind your back and everything like that. But at the same time, if that's given to us, I'm not sitting there going, "Oh, we've really got away with one there." It just, I guess if I was going to really pick the bones out of it, I'd kind of say, does that need to go to VAR? Is that like clear and obvious? But that is, for me, unfortunately, not for other people, I get that, but for me, unfortunately, that is what has been decided on now in terms of officiating. So it's I'm not furious about that one, to be honest, because I think those are given whether they kind of should be or not.
Yeah, Clive, it's interesting, right? Because if that was given for us, I'd absolutely take it. I'd say we're a bit fortunate. I think the reason it feels so harsh, right, is this was a game where a first goal was going to be critical, because if we managed to get it, I think they would have had to totally change the way they were approaching the game. in a way that would have allowed players like Odegaard to come back into it. Some of the players that were marginalized by the way we're playing, Saka as well. By the way, we haven't mentioned him, and I don't know that it'll come up as a big talking point, but I want to give Martinelli credit because I think in the first half, Martinelli's unlucky. He's not on the pitch for the period where we come back and get a point. But during the period where we didn't really show up, I thought he was the player who really showed up and carried some threat. But Clive, like the thing about this penalty is it gives Chelsea success with an approach that wasn't otherwise generating any. Let's be clear about this game. Chelsea produced 1.3 expected goals in this game, okay, of which 0.79, call it 0.8 to round, came from the penalty. So that's half an expected goal that they created in this whole game at home, and they get 2 goals out of that. And again, one of them's the penalty. So the penalty shout is a big moment in the game, but I have to level with you, Clive. And I listened to you on Righty's House, and this is where I totally agree with you. We've given a penalty here for an officious rule enforcement, a pedantic enforcement of the rule, and not given one for violence. When Jesus is cleared out, Jesus has his ankle nearly taken off by Palmer and then his head nearly taken off by the keeper. And I feel for the guy. He had a bad game, but my goodness, he was in the wars. That doesn't feel right. That the pedantic enforcement of the rules is a penalty, but absolutely committing an act of unfettered violence on a striker is not. If they had given that penalty, would you have said fair enough, rules applied sort of the way you expect them to be? Are you more outraged that the one was given, not the other?
I'm just more outraged about the unwritten rules in football. So as a goalkeeper, you are allowed to come out, and you hear people say, I want my keeper to come out and just take the lot. Take the lot. Well, when has that been okay? He should not be allowed to come out without any sort of accountability and just pretend he's going for it and just take people out in a dangerous manner, right? And so that needs to change. So sometimes, mate, it's better to go and be half drunk and then come back and watch it again, because when you're watching a game accompanied by Gary Neville and he chooses his narrative of the day was our goalkeeper, hence you've got to talk about it, Elliot. But why wouldn't he take the fact his narrative be, this is the second time we've seen this sort of collision in the box. The first one got an apology from the PGMOL, I think. We definitely got an admission that it was wrong. This is very, very similar. So, again, you learn by experience. We've learned about how to approach these games, hopefully. Refereeing body, have you not learned by experience? Has that note not got through to your referees? Say, if we see something like this again, has that note not got through to your VAR people? So you've now gone and repeated a similar error. Right? So I almost don't want to, it's a waste of our brains. It's a waste of our brains. So I wish the people that surround the game, that do create directives, whether you like it or not, the influence of some of our Sky commentators is huge. How about create a narrative which protects other football players from injury, rather than worrying about a manager trying to be innovative around his goalkeeper selection? Why not do something like that? That would be really useful. Why not do something about the fact that Cucurella's allowed at least 3 or 4 fouls every time he plays Saka, and rather than say, I think he's doing really well against him, why not say he's fouling him continuously and he's not being protected?
Yeah.
Choose the right thing to talk about. It frustrates me a lot, because these things stop the game from flowing, stop the game that we all pay to watch. And it annoys me. And we're all invested in. I honestly don't want to talk about penalty decisions, because it is what it is. It is what it is. It's a shame, though. I mean, that was a dangerous collision to his head.
Yeah.
And it's just not spoken about.
Yeah.
I think the emphasis needs to flip around into that type of discussion, rather than worrying about how you jump for a header, because anyone with half a brain will tell you are taught to jump. And when you jump, you lift your arms, and you're actually taught to leave your arms near your head, because it stops collisions from the outside. So you keep your arms up near your temples. You get a blow from the outside, that can really be damaging. So you can deflect off a blow. If the ball hits your hand there, that is completely natural. You know, and these people like Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank trying to tell me that that's not natural, I'm losing patience, mate. I'm losing patience. I wish I could mute a lot of them, you know, and just watch the game with because it's starting to affect my enjoyment of a football match.
Yeah, I think that's right. And like, ultimately, I am frustrated by it because I think the penalty gave Chelsea something to cling on to with their approach. And I don't have a problem with Chelsea's approach being to wreck the game. Wreck the game is a little unfair, but to contest the game physically and to make it a battle of physical running power and to stop us from progressing it. But like they weren't creating anything through that approach, right? This game had a 0-0 kind of vibe to it in the way they were playing it. They got a goal, and that goal changes how we think about their strategy. Now, look, I'll admit, in the first 10 minutes, it looked like they could have scored a few because we're just giving them the ball inside of our defensive third. So I want to be clear about that. I mean, Cole Palmer probably should score from the situation where Raya just gives him the ball. Is that the one where Raya gives it to him? It is, yeah. And by the way, that is a terrible pass from Raya. I watched it again. He's trying to play it up the middle, but even if he doesn't give it to Palmer, the pass isn't on. So just a bad decision around. But
the next pass isn't on. And
no.
He's passed the ball to someone who hasn't got a pass. So that's a bigger crime because you're passing responsibility without taking any yourself. Right? So if he does get that ball, his next thing is, now I'm going to be in the frame because I'm being ganged up on. And he can see that. And this is the time to play territory and clip the ball. Clip it. Don't worry about it. I don't care if it says on Sofa scored incomplete pass and Elliot has to read it back to me. I remember the situation in the game when actually clipping it long to get it over 4 or 5 players that are encroaching is exactly what you should do. And he's experienced enough at 28 to know, Tim, to know when to clip and when to go short.
Yeah, I wonder here as well, just to weigh in on the goalkeeper thing, I do wonder as well whether Raya in some of these situations is overthinking because that's why he's in the team, and he knows he is. He knows he's in the team because he's got better short distribution than Ramsdale, and I wonder if sometimes he's overthinking that and going, but if I start smashing it long, remember what Arteta said after the City game about goalkeepers, some goalkeepers, who I won't name, smash the ball all over the place, and I wonder if there's a bit of even when it's like not quite on. And I personally, I suspect that will calm down a bit, because the other thing I'm detecting in Raya is actually he does those things at the start of the game, but I really think he settles into games. Like the way he finishes them, I think is really, really strong. And that to me kind of says, I don't know if he just relaxes a bit, whether the game state allows it, maybe the opponents are too tired to press in the same way, I don't know. But like, I feel like maybe the first 10-15 minutes he's overthinking, because it's like, this is why he's put me in, because Ramsdale keeps smashing it long and we keep losing it, so I have to go short. But we know Raya's got good long distribution as well.
Yep. Clive?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Tim. And you sort of touched on something I was thinking about earlier on. We're getting to know Raya. So we've now seen 3 or 4 of these games when Tim's absolutely right. He's ended the game really, really strongly. And so we're getting to know him. Let's be honest, the Brentford games we've seen, highlight saves or highlight errors. That's all we've seen. Yeah, let's be honest. That's what we've seen. We don't watch Brentford every single week. We look at the data and think, he's better at this, better at that. Highlight saves, highlight errors. Let's bring him in and see what happens. Our goalkeeping coach knows him. But we're getting to know him. We're getting to know how he manages stress. We're getting to know how he goes through a game and what his game model is. And so, again, why I've always didn't rush to conclusion this was over with him being number 1. I didn't want to do it because I feel as I wanted to get to know him a little bit more and also get to know how he affects our team. We are stronger for these 2 goalkeepers. Make no mistake, we are a stronger team if we allow it to be a strong point and not be something that drains from our group. And that's my worry. So our next actions are very important, that they become positive ones and not just, it's okay for you to do what you like. Because the other guy, who hasn't done much wrong, I'm sorry, I just don't fancy him. If it's one of them, say it. And let him go in January. If we're building a squad where the players are engaged, we want them all engaged. These are the work, and I'm right behind this, by the way. If everyone wants to be engaged, then treat them like that. That's where I am.
Yeah. By the way, we should congratulate Aaron Ramsdale on the birth of his baby boy. So congratulations to him and his partner for that. A lovely moment. Can I just ask you guys this? Clive, I'll stay with you just for a second. Mikhailo Mudryk, there's just no world where he means that, right? And I'm not trying to just be the Arsenal fan. I've watched it from multiple angles. He doesn't look up. He doesn't check the position of Raya, and the way he shapes his foot, I feel like it just comes off his foot wrong. It looks like trying to curl it. I mean, you played the game. I clearly, as everyone can tell, have not. I don't think he means that, right?
No. So basically, I have played the game, and I have done what you call toed across, right? Where you toe it, you don't get it in the instep. He's toed that. He did say that their goalkeeping analysis said that Raya, you can loop crosses over him to the back post. You know what? I sort of believe that, but don't tell me you try to chip him from there, right? Because that was and Tim's for putting the chat there off his wrong foot. And actually, what you want as a fullback is you want to put pressure on his wrong foot, knowing the quality of cross is not likely going to be any good. And so what you want to do is really cut the cutbacks from. So I thought he had a bit too much space, but he's just toed that, looking for the back post, and he's gone in. I don't know what it's like in the ground, Tim, but it felt like there's a half a second of silence. Has that gone in? You know what I mean? It felt like that from the home fans. They were shocked. We were shocked. It's like, crikey, we thought we were going to get back into the game, and now it's 2-0. So, mate, I would like Mudryk up until Saturday. It's over for me and him.
Yeah. I don't think he was very good for what it's worth. Look, well, and just one thing on this, Tim. I want to go back to the keeper thing. I have no idea. This is one of those, I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert in something because I read something someone else wrote. Did you have any feeling in that moment that Raya was in the wrong position? One of Raya's strengths, by the way, as a keeper, is the way he claims crosses. He's known for it. He's good at it. I'm inclined to believe that where he's standing is where he felt he needed to be, and I trust him based on, I mean, we've seen him have brilliant games claiming crosses for us. And to his credit, by the way, really, really good in a 1v1 against Nico Jackson in this game in the second half. Had one really good save down low to, I think, on Cole Palmer, who was trying to hit the far post. So he did a couple of things right. Do you have any issue with his positioning on that goal?
So it was at the other end to me, so I didn't have the perspective on it. Look, I'm not going to lie. I think looking back at it, it's not. He's probably half a step too far over. But yeah, absolutely. That's why he catches the amount of crosses he does, and I've seen a lot of people contesting that, but he really does, and the data shows you that. I think, as I think your eye should show it to you as well. But I do think on this whole situation, a lot of us are taking our priors into this, and that's something like, because I've the other argument I've heard is it worth kind of all the fuss? Like, we should not conflate what we talk about on Twitter and what bothers Mikel Arteta. Yeah. I don't think it will be a fuss to him. I'm more inclined to go with Clive's second supposition, which is just, I do kind of think this is over for Ramsdale, but I might be wrong. But anyway, look, we used to have a goalkeeper, right, who was one of the best ever at catching crosses and coming off his line. And guess what happened to him a few times? Naeem, Ronaldinho, and you know what? Those two incidents were 7 years apart, and they were heartbreaking, and they looked awful on him. But he must have caught 100 crosses because he had that position. And by the way, and I felt exactly the same when Ramsdale got lobbed from the halfway line against Sporting Lisbon in March. I don't ascribe any blame to Ramsdale for that at all, because it's like, if a guy gets you from the halfway line, fair enough, because with a lot of errors, but with goalkeeper errors, I think you have to think, and it is an error, of course it is, a goalkeeper shouldn't be getting beaten from there regardless of whether it was a fluke, but it's about repeatability. we play Sheffield United in the Premier League next. Are you telling me that Sheffield United are now on the training ground trying to smash balls into the top corner from the touchline? I hope so.
They're working on their chipping the keeper from the touchline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like it will probably happen to him again in a couple of seasons, but he'll catch 50, 100, 200, whatever crosses in the meantime, so I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, the things that are repeatable, like in this game, Chelsea putting out a midfield of Gallagher, Caicedo, and Enzo and running riot in that part of the pitch and wrecking the game for the opposition and forcing everything out wide and saying you will not be able to progress the ball through the middle. That's repeatable. Getting a lucky handball call from a fluke deflection and a chip mishit cross, like that's not repeatable. You know, I got to say, Clive, that you judge a manager on what they do over the course of seasons, the tactics they install, the players they recruit. But in a game, you judge a keeper on a manager on how he reacts to what's happening in the game. And I think Mikel had a 10 out of 10 day in terms of reacting. The Tomiyasu sub had to be made, and it had to be made when he made it. Right before the half, Zinchenko got absolutely rinsed by Sterling. And it was clear that they targeted him. And by the way, there were a lot of comments that they targeted him after the game. Mikel Arteta said they were targeting him after he was on the yellow. So he took him off, and Tomiyasu did what Tomiyasu does, which is he just shut that worry down so that we could focus on other parts of the game. Martin Odegaard is your captain. You've just re-signed him. Mikel loves Martin Odegaard. With one goal in the game and the clock ticking away, the decision to bring on Kai Havertz and take off Martin Odegaard is a very brave one. He made that one. I think it was brilliant. Obviously, the Trossard sub worked perfectly. He gets the equalizer. I think the changes were absolutely spot on and not the easy ones, right? Eddie for Jesus is maybe not the popular move to make in that moment, or Kai for Odegaard, but they really worked. They really changed the game the way they needed to.
Yeah, I'd have liked to have seen Havertz on a bit sooner.
Yeah.
I thought Jorginho was struggling in the first half. And I'd like to see that change happen then. And I think the outcome could have been different. But I do think, like I said earlier, I think Mikel's given us these players so we can have these debates. And I think he gets a lot more right than wrong. We tend to have hindsight conversations based on outcome. The outcome was positive this time, but I did feel in this game it was a game for playing over the press. And we now have a 6'4" player that we can play over the press to. So we didn't have that last year. So we have it now because the manager bought him. Right? So this was for the scenario, and he came on in the 78th minute. That to me was a little bit late. And so not quite a 10 out of 10 for me, Elliot, but I do think your point on Partey earlier was absolutely brilliant, by the way, because that player is so important to us, that player, rather than the player himself, you see what I mean? That central pivot in our team, somebody with strength and character and presence. And I did feel with Jorginho in there, the game was being defined by Jorginho's presence, which is a much more of a presence which is not required for the day. So Tomiyasu won again. Someone's back in form. Some people wanted him exited because he was an injury-prone player. Back in form, comes in. He's much better on the left for me. He's a very good player on the left-hand side. He's forced himself into the conversation, hasn't he, by pure form. He's forced his way in. I thought Eddie's chance when he flipped across the face of the area, it's probably quite near you, Tim. That's an Eddie chance. That's unique to him. The ball's not even there to hit, and he gets it on the angle. He's done that before at Chelsea, something similar. He is that's him there. That is what he is. He's an opportunistic player. I don't think he's that good in the box. That's what he is. He's opportunistic. He rats around defenders. He takes the ball off them. That's what he is. I thought that was a superb execution. If that had dropped in, it would have made my day. I thought that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Smith Rowe came in. Again, I think he's a bit conservative for me when he comes on. Sets the ball a lot. And whenever I want him to get the ball to his feet and turn around and run. I'm trying to stay away from him at the moment because I think he's a long way to come back due to the amount of games he's played. So people are very quick to rush conclusions. I'm trying to stay away from him and not say what my eyes see. I think he just needs time, to get back to our level. And every time he plays on a pitch, he'll get closer. So yeah, we're using our squad now for the second time in a row against a Big Six type team. Mm-hmm. And it's becoming really important. And I'll reiterate again, we can have these discussions now. and that is a positive place to be.
Yeah, and I think please come in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, can I chime in on Smith Rowe? Because I did want to say something about this. I think this is the first time I can really remember in a long time Smith Rowe getting... I'm hyperbolising by calling them garbage minutes. But, you look at the patterns of his substitutions, either when we're 3-0 up or 3-0 down. Or it's like Saka's got two legs hanging off and it's the 97th. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can kind of see what the manager's been thinking. This was the first time that he reached for Smith Rowe in like a real time of need.
Yep.
And I think that's really interesting. But also, what does it show? Again, like for Smith Rowe, his challenge, that's a foot on the ladder. A bit like when we brought Vieira on against Fulham. And okay, he didn't quite have like the impact that Vieira had at Fulham, but it's a foot on the ladder. It's that, okay, he's trusted me in this scenario. But why did he want Smith Rowe on? Because he wanted urgency. Like, he wanted that type of player. And we were talking about how all our ball players, Zinchenko, Ødegaard, Jorginho, they were all off it. So what did he want with the substitutions he brought on? And Nketiah, like Clive said, strong running in behind, strong at taking the ball off players and, snatching half chances out of nothing. Like the amount of goals Nketiah scores, charging down defenders and goalkeepers and things like that. So why did he want Smith Rowe on for Ødegaard? Because it was, okay, I want the guy, like I've lost the precision, I want the guy who's going to bang, bang, bang. It's a wet pitch. I want that ball moving quickly. The ball's been moving too slowly. Whether Smith Rowe did that or not, I don't know. But for him, I think that's a really positive sign that Arteta found an important game state where he wanted Smith Rowe's qualities. That is a foot on the ladder, and he has to get another foot on the ladder now.
Yeah, and the thing about having this squad that we trust means that on a sopping wet pitch where they really attacked us with a lot of running power and a lot of energy, we could freshen it up. I think it's really important to note that Chelsea made one sub, Jackson for Mudryk in the 66th minute, before the 84th minute. Then they swapped Madueke for Sterling and Reece James for Cole Palmer. No changes in that midfield zone, right? No changes to the fullback areas. Those guys had run an absolute marathon, and we had some fresh legs out there. And the first goal comes from Eddie Nketiah, chasing down a little bit of a lost cause, just a little bit of extra pressure, a little bit of players squeezed up, and it's Declan Rice. And I just want to give Rice his flowers. But first of all, I want to give him his flowers for his comments after the match. I love a player who recognizes the reality of the situation. He said we stunk in the first half. It's the worst first half we played. I think he's right. He stepped up in the moment. And that execution, just so you know, FBref has it as a 0.07 XG chance. All right, so a 7% chance if you want to look at it that way. And he hits it absolutely brilliantly first time. And that's our lifeline. That's our way back into the game. And just adds that little bit of doubt for Chelsea, gives us that little bit of belief, something that can come from it. Kai Havertz important in the second goal. Look, I don't want to be guilty of doing hey, look, he passed it 3 yards to someone in a move where we had a goal. Look how good he was. But I do think he was important with the chest down he has to get the long ball into their penalty box. And then he does have the pass out to Saka. I don't think it's a coincidence, by the way, that Cucurella finally gets a yellow card in the second half. And I think the 77th minute, something like that. 71st minute, and then maybe a little bit less tight on Saka, a little bit less physical, in the way he's playing out wide. And then Saka puts in the cross. And this is one thing, Clive, like Trossard does brilliant there. It's a brilliant run. But I said this at the beginning of this pod. There's the overthinking it way of looking at football, which is like, don't look at the one or two big moments. Look at the whole game because so many things happen in a game. But I sometimes think that is overthinking it because it's a low-scoring sport, a low-event sport, and if you influence the game in the key events, that's why you're there. Saka did not have a good game in my view. He certainly didn't have a good first half. But the quality he puts on that cross to put it on Trossard's foot at the back post where no one can get it but Trossard, and it's what do they call it? An invitation, right, to score. That's why you leave Bukayo Saka on the pitch, to pull something like that out of his bag, and it's absolute top-drawer quality to rescue a point.
Yeah, he was getting kicked in the first half. So he had no protection. He found it very difficult to turn around. And we were giving him the passes with his back to goal. And basically, that's what happens. And that's why we've done that thing where we have Ben White passes inside, so he's receiving the ball, not standing still with his calves showing the defender. We were able to do that today because our passing angles weren't great, because the pitch wasn't great. So we had to play something different. I don't want to go back to it again, but we just have to play over the press. It's very simple. And then he's getting the ball second phase, then he can do his stuff, which he did on the goal. Getting the ball second phase. Once he's got the ball second phase, he's got people unbalanced. He can't be stopped. I don't know how he shifts his body the way he does. He can't be stopped. And the quality of that cross was superb. And the fact Trossard catches it on the volley, on his, basically, he doesn't let it hit the floor. I mean, how good are these players? Seriously, how good are they? That is absolute quality. To do that at full speed. And it just, for me, just highlighted the gap, and hence why I was a bit disappointed towards the end. I'm cool with performance. Is always going to be what you're allowed to do on the day, and maybe what the referee allows you to do on the day. I'm really cool with how a game flows out. What I love about Saka in this instance was he was getting kicks, he was getting dominated, but where he went after that was to say, "Yeah, you think you've got me." And he didn't just do it on the goal, he did it for a period around that period. His second half performance was really, really good. Really good. There are comps out there on his second half performance alone. It's enough for you to think that's the whole game. Really, really good performance. And that, to end the game with the captain's armband on, mate, these are the stuff you walk away with and say, that's repeatable. Because he will have days where he's being done. But how do you come out of it? That's repeatable. Trossard's repeated ability to come off the bench and absolutely make sure you can't miss him. That's repeatable. Because I agree with you that Martinelli was our one boy in the first half. The fact that we've now got a potential couple of options with Jesus, who got kicked out of this game a little bit. How we could potentially use Jesus, because he did drop deep in this game, because the pitch is quite small for me. It feels small anyway. And before you know it, he's playing left back and he's playing centre mid. And this is why I wanted Havertz to play, because I think Havertz they could have rotated and been the alternative for each other. We need to go over, you just flip Havertz in there. And Jesus just drops to midfield. We can do these things now that we couldn't do last season. So I'm really encouraged by our optionality. Now it's about using it maybe just 10 minutes quicker so we can just get all the wins that we need. That's really it. That's just a fan talking, right? 10 minutes earlier, we get the wins, we get on the beers, and Saturday night's beautiful, right? That's all I'm after, right? Perfection, like everybody else. Doesn't mean anyone needs to be fired. We just want to do it a bit quicker to recognise the game. But hey, that's what it is.
So this is where we come to what I think is the fascinating part of this conversation, just 70 minutes into it, which is, Tim, is the glass half empty or is the glass half full? You would think, being unbeaten at this point, not having lost to United, not having lost to Spurs, not having lost to City, not having lost to Chelsea, having beaten both Manchester teams, by the way, and being tied at the top of the table, at least until Tottenham lose in a couple of hours, you would think that the mood would be ebullient. And yet I think there's concern. Mm-hmm. I'll admit, let me not do the third person stuff. I have concern.
Yep, same.
This narrative of us being the best out of possession team in world football, I think is probably true. I think there is simply no nits to pick. There are no nits to pick with the way we are organized, with our structure, with our shape, with the way we play out of possession. But it's another game where we really did not find the ways to create the volume of chances or the quality of chances that you'd like. Now, at Stamford Bridge, against that team, as physical as they were, as bad as the pitch was playing, we got 2 goals. You'd take 2 goals away any day, especially at Stamford Bridge. But I did find that there was, and I felt it myself, just a bit of concern. First of all, I think it's because had we gotten the equalizer in the 90th +4, I'd probably be over the moon today. I'll admit that because of when we got the equalizer, I wanted us to go on and win it and was disappointed we didn't and thought we could the way they were flagging.
Same.
So where are you on the glass being half full or half empty? it is impossible to be upset with where we sit right now, both in the table and with our results. But I think it is possible to just have the slightest bit of concern in the back of your mind about whether we're creating enough chances to score goals to go and accrue points at the pace we're going to need to from here, you know?
Yeah. I think this gets to the nub of why I felt annoyed at full time. I think you've said it there. First of all, when it was 2-2, I was like, it's 85 minutes, and there's probably going to be like at least 8 or 9 minutes stoppage time. Like, we're in business here. I think there was a little bit of permissive refereeing there as well, in terms of Chelsea wanted to scuff the game up, and the referee was tired and was happy with that as well.
By the way, they also got a goal kick. That's the most obvious deflection for a corner I've ever seen in my life, and given how well we take our set pieces, like a little bit frustrating there as well.
Particularly when you've got an assistant on that side who...
What was he looking at? It's very strange.
Exactly, yeah. But anyway, details. I think it's clear we're finessing the formula still, trying to get that balance between threat and control. And I'm okay with that journey, as it were. I'd love to be there already, but it's clear we're still finessing that formula. I'm with you. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we're too on the control side, and that's what annoyed me about this game. I think the margins really went against us in this game, but what annoys me is we allowed it to come down to margins. Whereas last year, for example, and I accept we were in a different phase, it was a different Chelsea team and all of that, but last year we just went there and we bossed them from minute one, and we played in their half. And I remember, even, that was only 1-0, that was a 2-0 game that finished 1-0, but even the last 10 minutes, they didn't get a sniff. They weren't in our half because we were playing high up. So I think there's something about the areas we're playing in, and some of that I do think is down to some of the changes in personnel as well. We don't have Xhaka there anymore. We're kind of changing what we do in that area every week, and I think you can see there's a little bit, but a lot of this will be dictated by what happens next, because we don't really know yet. So this could be a tweaking thing. It could be a bit of a periodisation thing. It could be, well, do you know what? Last season, we were hell for leather, winning games in the first 15 minutes, and then what happened? We were completely out of puff by February, so we don't want to do that anymore. But at the same time, we cannot just take for granted that, because we burnt out last season, that means that we're coming to the boil, and we're going we can't take for granted that we're definitely going to be brilliant in the second half of the season. I do think there is also something about managing this season where we don't have the World Cup in the middle this time, which that's just a completely different thing that has ever happened in English football. I'm not blaming it for us not winning the league, but it put a very definite before and after. It put a very definite split in the season. I really don't think we came back after that the same team, and I really think without it we might have carried the momentum just a little bit longer, maybe not all the way to May, but maybe it wouldn't have been February when we blew up and when we stopped and we lost an important player in Jesus. So it could be, we could look back on this in May when we've won the league and we can say, we just did what City did last season. This time last year, City were working some things out. How did they play with Haaland? They worked it out. They won the league. That could happen to us. Or we could be looking back in April and going, it just never quite clicked, did it? And did we disrupt things too much? And did we quite get the formula right? It will all be dictated by what is to come. But at this point of the season, for me, it's stay in touch. Stay in touch. I'm not sure whether it's good for us to lead like we did last year, but stay in touch and work through some of these issues while you're doing things like coming back from 2-0 down at Chelsea, so you haven't had a disaster. Stay in touch, work out the issues, and then come to the boil in the spring. If we do that, this period will have been really worthwhile. If we're still doing this in March, then it's probably because we haven't quite got that balance right.
And since you mentioned City, I think it's worth pointing out, we're 7th in expected goals right now. City are 8th, right behind us. But if you look at expected goals allowed, it's us and City right at the top of the table. And goals allowed, us and City right at the top of the table with 7 and 8 allowed respectively. So there may be something to that, right? It is a marathon, not a sprint. What we're trying to do right now is control games, dominate games, get the out of possession component of the game figured out. By the way, integrate players and pieces and figure out how they all fit together and what those automatisms are so that when we get further and further into the season and the players understand each other more and the manager understands, which players are right for which situations, we start to feel a little bit more unstoppable. And if you're going to learn how to be unstoppable, being tied at the top of the table and unbeaten is a pretty good position to be in to learn. Clive, is the glass half empty or yep?
Could I just really cap that by adhering to Arsenal's version of Godwin's Law by saying the Invincibles did this as well. A lot of draws in the first half of that season while they were working things out.
And here's something weird. I'm sure you probably saw the stat go around, but going into this game, we had the exact same wins, exact same draws, exact same goals for, and exact same goals against as the Invincibles at that point in the season. And both teams played Chelsea in the next game, at Stamford Bridge, and I think we drew at Stamford Bridge that season.
We beat them.
Did we beat them in that game?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a shame. Yeah. All right, so it's not the exact same as the Invincibles, I guess. Clive, glass half full or half empty? I think it is. Look, objectively, it is clearly 3/4 full, 9/10 full. But where are you in balancing your enthusiasm for the start you've seen us make versus concerns you may have about the caliber of our play, particularly attacking-wise, and what we need to figure out to really go on and win the league by like March or early April?
I think, Elliot, you know me well enough to know my answer. I'm a pragmatist by heart. Mm-hmm. So what I am seeing, I generally like. This time last year, I was having discussions with some City fans and some smart people, and they were laughing at us, really, in a way, or laughing at me. They sort of said, this time of year, we don't run about too much. We just take our time. We just take it easy. And that stuck with me, that did. That stuck with me. At the time, I'm thinking, oh, man, we're just winning games. This is great. Probably how Spurs fans are feeling right now. This is great. Well, just keep winning one game at a time. But actually, the Man City guys were just really cool. They knew the course. They know the course. They know when it counts. It stuck with me, that did. It did sort of help my analysis towards the end of the season and where I was towards March and April. And it was triggered by these City fans. Another thing to bring into the equation, because what Tim said, I agree 1,000%. Another thing to bring into the equation, the only thing he missed out really, was we're playing the Champions League. We are playing away at Sevilla tomorrow night. That is not a Mickey Mouse game, right? They've just had a fantastic game against Real Madrid. How do you think you manage this? Mate, was Chelsea the trap game, mate? Was it the trap game in the week? That's why Thomas Partey was sitting there with his legs up. I don't think he did a jog down the sideline, did he, Tim, on Saturday? I didn't see him move, right? So,
you leave the trap game analysis to me, Clive.
Chelsea was the trap game. And when you have a home game, you go away to Seville, you bring all your boys there, you win that game because you have to. You've got to come back with something. Then Saturday, in front of your home fans, well, I'm sorry, chaps, we have to win on Saturday in front of our home fans because that's what we do. Right? So a 2-2 draw at Chelsea, although it looks good, it looks okay now given the way the game went. We're a bit frustrated because we could have beaten them. But, mate, I take 2 more wins this week that are really important. For a home win, to keep things moving in front of the fans, and an away game in Seville when all of the faces are going out there. Most of the people everyone's making that trip. It's going to be one for the ages. And we need to do well there. We can't not do well. So, yeah, I'm absolutely fine with this. This is a different year. I tried to say at the start of the year, let's men in black last year's season and stop thinking about last season because it's not appropriate. We have a new season, new sporting responsibilities, new expectations. We have to dismiss what we saw last year and just watch this thing grow.
Yeah, I think the further away I get from the full-time whistle where I found myself annoyed, the more I realize it's an excellent point that we picked up at Stamford Bridge. And one thing that was said on the Righty's House episode that you did, Clive, is I think people are going to start to realize that Chelsea's table position is a bit of a false position, and actually that's quite a good point. Chelsea haven't played anybody, And I have to admit, going into the game, I looked at that as their underlyings are pretty good, but they haven't played anybody. When they come up against a good team like us, they're going to get smacked. But what I realize is some teams are built to play the good teams, right? I think Chelsea are a bit goal shy, and they were a bit goal shy against us too. But what they're not shy of is running power, physical quality, the ability to shut down the opposition, the ability to contest the areas where the good teams want to have the ball. And they haven't played teams that necessarily want to do that. They played us, and they were effective at it. And I think when they play other teams that want to have the ball, like Spurs, like City, you're going to see similar capabilities. Clive, you want to come back on that?
Yeah, well, again, don't overpraise them too much, Elliot. Mate, they just ratted around.
Yeah.
They just had a front six midfield, and they ratted around on the wet.
But you got to have the legs for it.
And smash us at home. And by the way, smash us on the grass with a friendly home referee, and that was it. And they, by the way, where is all this surrounding the referee yellow card thing gone? That didn't seem to. That's gone, isn't it? That rule's disappeared pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. Only person, I think Arteta got a yellow card, which is standard because he complained about something. So so don't overpraise them. Again, we spoke about what's sustainable or not. Their sustainable way of scoring is not there. They can they can run. But when you give them the ball and they have to create against mid to deep blocks, let's see what they do. Yeah. Right? Let's see what they do. They won't be able to do it, right? It's what I keep saying.
They haven't been able to do
it. What we're building at Arsenal, what we're building, although we get frustrated now and again when it doesn't quite go to the way we want it to go, but we can do the deep block game. We can play it from the back. We can do the ultra pressing game. We can go over the press if you want. Maybe do it a bit quicker next time. We have got to go over the press. And we can go to the outside as well. And we got one-on-one mergers on the outside that are now getting fitter. So we can play all different game states. And we can control and create with our number 10s. We can do it. We have the players. We just have to apply the right style to the game that's on offer. Chelsea can't do that yet. Enough praise of Chelsea, Elliot. Enough.
Oh, I mean, I'm always happy to criticize Chelsea. Like, don't worry about that. Well, coming up next in the league, we have the bottom team at home. And we've never messed that up. So we have nothing to worry about. That is, how bad are they? They've lost every single game they played in the league except Everton, which they drew. They drew Lincoln City in the cup. Like, they are really, really bad. So there's nothing to worry about. We've never, ever had a problem with that kind of fixture. But as a final word, Tim, we do go to Sevilla tomorrow. I mean, we've run around on a sopping wet pitch. We put a lot into that game, but we did make a lot of changes in the second half. So we kept some legs fresh. But, a Declan Rice who was out there the whole 90, put in a big shift. Thomas Partey never got off the bench. Would you be inclined to... Look, we have to win this game. We're not in the best position in the Champions League right now. There's plenty of time to recover it, but you'd feel a hell of a lot better if we go to Seville and win, and then you got Sevilla at home, and you got Lens at home, right? You're going to feel pretty good about the position that you're in to go ahead and top this group. Don't do that tomorrow, and suddenly you do have quite a bit of work to do, and you might even need a little help. So I'm not saying rotate, but we as we just indicated, we have a very big, deep, high-quality squad that can go to Seville and get a result if one or two need to have a break. Who would you give a break, if anybody? What do you think he'll do in terms of approaching this game? Because it's tomorrow. It feels like we played today. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd rotate any of the usual suspects, as it were. Any of the but like I wouldn't look at resting. That's not what I do here per se. For the reasons you say, this is a pivotal game in this group. I think if we get a result out of this, like even a draw, I think is a good result. In this game, a win's brilliant, and we're in control of the group. And we've also, we've got Sheffield United at home on Saturday. I wouldn't massively rotate for that either. I just think some gentle rotation between these two games. Then we've got the League Cup against West Ham. That's your 11 changes right there. That's your... the guys who can't get on the pitch usually, that's when you play them. So there is like a rest midweek coming up for some of those players. So I wouldn't look at I'd look at if he's available, Thomas Partey, start Kai Havertz in this game. Tomiyasu is really pushing for inclusion, and let's face it, he could slot into any one of those back four spots and take 70 minutes off of one of those guys if needed. I do think the goalkeeper situation is interesting there. I did think Andrew wrote a good blog this morning about maybe playing Ramsdale, because you've kind of got to let him at least think that there's a route back in, whether it's the kind of, okay, you can be the Champions League goalkeeper now, or, just not letting him become too disconnected from the group. But again, he might not travel for very understandable reasons. So, yeah, I'd look at a couple of changes. Havertz, like Tomiyasu, I think can play this game. If Partey's fit enough, put him in midfield as well. I wouldn't go overboard, though. Just like short rotation, and then the same for Sheffield United. Like short rotation, make another 2 to 3, and then all 11 against West Ham, because that isn't a game that really matters that much.
Yeah, on the Raya thing, I just wonder if the fact that he's going to Spain would be a reason he'd play him, just because he'd want to play there.
Yeah.
Raya, interestingly, in the week, had given some comments about he might like to play in La Liga someday, which, if we were inclined to get angry at players for saying
read the room, don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Read the room. Yeah.
But also, like Clive said, they played Real Madrid at the weekend, right? So, they didn't have an easy game either. So, we should both be in the same boat there.
Look, I'll admit, at the pub, a few drinks in, when he was having a bit of a horror start to the game, and the La Liga comments came up, did I maybe call him David Raya Vallecano? I may have. I may have. Do I mean it? Of course not. I love all our players. Clive, let's get out of here. But do you have any quick thoughts on how to push the Sevilla game? I just think it's too important to just say, rotate everybody and start Nelson and start. But you have to be thoughtful, just given what we went through at the weekend. So how would you approach it?
Yeah, I would play the strongest team possible. And, this is a 20, 30 million pound game, right? We don't mess about. We don't qualify for the group stage. It's going to cost us money, real money. And so, and there's no way you get it back. So this is important game to establish ourselves. Fortunately, there's been a lot of draws in this group, so we haven't lost anything. So just go and win the game. So leave nothing to chance, win the game, and then take people out for the weekend. And then Sheffield United will take care of itself if we approach it properly. I think, again, the lesson from Saturday to Tuesday is set the right tone in the first 5 minutes. Set the right tone. Be far more aggressive, far more purposeful in our attacking play, and not just have the ball. Me and Tim are talking about the women's team as well. It's a similar scenarios we're talking about. Play forward, play with attacking aggression when the opportunity is there. When you work the opportunity yourself, don't turn away from attacking opportunities to go back and around. Go get people, assert yourself. I think we'll be absolutely fine. So you take lessons. You get reminders, don't you, about your approach. And Chelsea, I guarantee you, mate, I tell you now, I'm going to put my neck out. The first 5 minutes of this game against Sevilla will not be like the first 5 minutes of the Chelsea game. We're going to be all after them.
Yep.
And if we're not, then the manager needs to raise the standards, which I'm sure he will be doing, and remind them of their responsibilities. So no problem at all.
I think it'll be a hell of an away day, that's for sure. When I was booking the flights to go over for the Sheffield United game, I definitely had a little thought of Sevilla to London, back to Minnesota. That could be the trip, but no, alas, is not meant to be. So I wish everybody who's making that trip an enjoyable one. We will have an instant reaction tomorrow. Clive and I might try to get together to do something actually in the morning tomorrow to put out before the Sevilla game, but if it's not possible, you'll at least have an instant reaction tomorrow. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, we love you so much. I have to admit, right, I think if last season had never happened, we'd be over the moon right now. We would be the happiest supporter group of any club in the Premier League. But last season did happen. And so I think we're being careful. We're being guarded. We're looking for signs. We're looking for some things. But all in all, hard to complain with the position we're in right now. So we'll talk to you tomorrow on the Instant Reaction, Thursday on the main pod. Clive's on Twitter, Clive PFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
Tim's on Twitter, @StoneManair. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
got an announcement to make soon, formulating the final plans on some ticket giveaways that we're going to do for home games this season. A good club level ticket that we'll start giving away regularly as a way to support our fundraiser, but just also give more people a chance to go see the Arsenal. So we'll talk to you about that once we formulate the full plan for it, but that is to come. So we love you. Hope you're doing well wherever you are, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10 Sevilla.